Hi there and welcome. I'm glad you're here tonight because we're about to take a little journey, not to a bustling city, not some faraway kingdom of dragons or giants, but to something a bit closer to home. Well, closer to home, if your home was somewhere in medieval Europe and your night didn't involve Netflix, a heating system, or even much food after sunset. So get comfy, maybe grab a blanket, maybe a cup of something warm, and let's wander together through medieval nights. I promise this isn't going to be scary. Well, maybe just a little mysterious, but the kind that makes you snuggle in a bit closer to your pillow. Now, imagine it's the end of a long day. The sun has sunk below the horizon, and the streets of your village are quieting down. The smells of smoke from cooking fires are fading into the cool evening air. People are finishing their last chores, perhaps brushing off the dust from their work, and settling down for the night. It's not pitch black yet, but the light is soft, gentle, and forgiving, perfect for some slow reflection on the day gone by. Night in medieval times wasn't just darkness. It was a whole different world. A world where every shadow could be a corner of comfort, a little moment of peace, or sometimes, well, a little spot for your imagination to wander into mischief. And honestly, I think that's part of what made medieval nights so magical. You see, daytime was all hustle and bustle. Farmers rushing to harvest crops, merchants shouting their wares in the market, children playing in the dirt. But nighttime was calm, slow, intimate. First things first, lighting. Medieval people didn't have the luxury of electric bulbs blinking on at the flick of a switch. Nope. Your world after sunset was lit by candles, oil lamps, maybe a fireplace if you were lucky. And yes, your entire house could be darker than you expect if the wind blew out a candle or if you only had one small lamp in the corner. So you learned to live with shadows, soft, warm shadows dancing on walls. Sometimes it made people nervous. Sometimes it made them feel cozy. I like to think it was more cozy than scary, though I admit those flickering shadows could play tricks on you. Imagine trying to get to the chamber pot without stepping on a cat or your little brother. Yeah, medieval nights were a bit like that. And then there were the sounds of the night. Far from being silent, medieval nights had their own soundtrack. The creak of timber in old houses, the occasional bark of a dog, distant owls calling to each other. Even the wind had a voice as it sneaked through narrow alleys or between wooden beams. If you listened carefully, every sound seemed important. Every little rustle could tell a story. Someone returning home late, a cat hunting the yard, or maybe the local watchman patrolling to make sure the village stayed safe. Safety was a big deal, by the way. People weren't just worrying about ghosts or goblins, though they might have blamed them for a weird noise. They were thinking about practical stuff. Could wolves get to the livestock? Are the streets secure? Is the fireplace dying out before the family is asleep? And speaking of fireplaces, let's talk warmth. Nights could be chilly, even during summer in some parts of Europe. Without modern heating, the hearth was life. Families gathered around it, sharing warmth, food, and stories. It was also one of the rare moments where life slowed down entirely. Kids might listen to their parents' tales of old heroes, saints, or the occasional mischievous trickster. Maybe a cat stretched lazily by the fire, a dog snored somewhere nearby, and everyone just existed in that moment. A perfect little pause in the chaos of the day. Now, I mentioned stories, and that brings us to human imagination at night. Darkness encouraged it. In the middle of a shadowy room, candlelight flickering on the wall, people let their minds wander. Some might think about what they'd do tomorrow. Some might invent little folk tales to amuse themselves. Others might worry about the world beyond their village. You know, mundane things like the harvest, taxes, and whether the neighbor's goat would sneak into your garden. But you also had stories passed down through generations. Tales of saints, spirits, or odd little miracles that no one could quite explain. And they told them slowly in hushed voices. Because the night had its own rhythm, and rushing through a story, that would be rude. Interestingly, nighttime was also a time for reflection. Without screens, without distractions, people naturally slowed down. They had time to think about their day, their loved ones, or the tasks ahead. Sometimes they prayed. Sometimes they just sat quietly and watched the flames flicker. Maybe that's something we miss in our busy, bright lives. There was a certain clarity in darkness, an intimacy in shadows, that gave space for thought. And honestly, it's kind of beautiful. Of course, there were some practical realities too. Most people weren't sleeping at 8 p.m. sharp. Night was for chores that couldn't be done during the day. Farmers might need to check on animals. Guards had to patrol. Bakers might finish bread for tomorrow. And while it sounds like work, it was slow, methodical, and rhythmic. There was a natural lull to these tasks that almost made them meditative. Picture someone kneading dough by firelight, the smell of bread filling the room, the only sound being the gentle slap of dough and the crackle of the hearth. That's medieval nightlife. Peaceful, purposeful, and surprisingly comforting. Oh, and did I mention humor? Even in the dark, life had its little moments of fun. Kids might play quiet games in the flickering candlelight. Adults might prank each other, like moving someone's boots closer to the fire while they weren't looking. Or imagine a sleepy cat knocking over a lamp. Chaos ensues, laughter follows, and the night continues its calm rhythm. Medieval nights weren't all solemn shadows. They had laughter tucked quietly into the corners, too. As the hours passed, people slowly moved toward sleep. Beds were simple. Straw mattresses. Blankets, if you were lucky, maybe a wooden headrest. Families huddled together for warmth. Some whispered prayers or sang lullabies. And slowly, one by one, the village, the town, or the castle would fall silent, except for the distant sound of the night we mentioned earlier, reminding everyone that the world was still alive, just slower, gentler, and quieter. So tonight, as we begin our journey into medieval nights, what life was really like after sunset, keep that feeling in mind. The soft flicker of candlelight, the warm hush of a house settling down, the gentle sounds of the night. That's the essence of the medieval world after dark. It's a world of calm shadows, soft laughter, small worries, and quiet stories. It's the world we're going to explore together. Take a deep breath. Relax. Let the medieval night wrap around you like a cozy cloak. And remember, while we may never fully live in those times, we can experience their nights, their quiet, and their stories at least for a little while. All right, with our lanterns in hand and the world slowing down around us, let's step fully into night and see what life was really like after the sun went down. Chapter 2. The Sunset Rituals. As the sun sinks lower, painting the sky with soft oranges and pinks, life begins to slow. People pause, sensing the gentle shift from day to night. Sunset wasn't just a change in light. It was a signal to start the evening routines, small rituals that made the world feel safe, calm, and familiar. The first step was usually lighting the lamps and candles. Homes didn't have much illumination, so a single clay lamp or a tallow candle could cast a whole room in a warm, flickering glow. Shadows danced across walls, sometimes stretching figures into shapes that made you blink twice, but mostly it was comforting. You got to see familiar corners in a softer light, and the world felt a bit quieter, slower, gentler. Of course, the occasional tallow candle smelled interesting, but it was part of life. Doors and gates were secured next. Wooden latches clicked shut. Courtyards were closed off, and people could rest easy knowing their homes and animals were safe. Night was unpredictable. Wolves prowled nearby. The occasional thief might wander down a dark alley, and goats, well, they had a habit of sneaking into gardens if no one was paying attention. Locking up was practical, but also marked a transition, a shift from the noisy, bustling day to the calm, introspective night. The evening meal followed. Families gathered around the hearth, sharing whatever the day had provided. Bread, cheese, some salted meat. It was simple, but satisfying. Kids might sneak a berry or an extra piece of bread when no one was looking. And while it was modest, there was a warmth that modern meals often miss, a sense of shared calm at the day's end. Evening prayer was another gentle ritual. Church bells rang across towns and villages, reminding people to pause and reflect. Families might bow their heads, whisper thanks, or simply stop what they were doing for a quiet moment. Some inevitably nodded off mid-prayer, lulled by the warmth of the hearth and the gentle shadows. It wasn't laziness. It was comfort, a natural surrender to the calm of the night. Personal care after sunset was minimal by modern standards, but still mattered. Hands and faces were washed if possible. Teeth weren't brushed with fancy brushes, but herbs might be chewed to freshen breath. Oils and simple lotions could be rubbed into skin, partly for hygiene, partly for comfort. Even small tasks like these were performed slowly and carefully, because the dim candlelight made every movement deliberate. Farmers and villagers also tended to animals before settling down. Cows, sheep, and chickens needed to be safely in pens. Children or young adults often took this task, softly humming songs or whispering little jokes to the livestock. The night's sounds, the rustle of leaves, the owl's call, a distant dog, added rhythm to these chores. Everything moved at a slower pace, almost meditative, as life gently wound down. Even simple evening chores, like stacking firewood or sweeping floors, had their place in the ritual. The work was quiet and purposeful. Every movement mattered in the dim light. And of course, the cat might weave between your feet, the dog snoring in the corner, and the occasional tumble of a candle kept life interesting. The night wasn't silent, but it had a gentle consistency that was both comforting and grounding. Stories and soft music often filled the space around the hearth. These weren't boisterous gatherings, but quiet moments of connection. Parents shared tales of saints, local heroes, or mischievous tricksters. Children listened, sometimes trying to stifle giggles, sometimes wide-eyed with imagination. Even neighbors might drop by for a quiet chat, bringing a small warmth to the otherwise still night. As the night deepened, most of the village or town would slowly retreat to sleep. Straw mattresses, blankets, and the occasional pillow provided comfort. People huddled together, exchanging whispers, prayers, or lullabies. The gentle flicker of lamps, the soft crackle of the fireplace, and the distant muffled sounds of the night created a lullaby of their own. Sunset rituals weren't just about practical preparation. They were calming, grounding, and quietly humorous. Kids sneaking berries, adults nodding off mid-prayer, cats toppling lamps, it all made the night feel alive yet peaceful. Every ritual, every small act, helped the medieval world transition from a busy day to a night of rest, reflection, and gentle imagination. By the time full darkness settled in, the village had transformed. The streets were quiet, homes glowed softly, and people were ready to let go of the day. Life after sunset was slower, more intimate, and more reflective than anything we often experience today. And perhaps that's why, centuries later, imagining medieval nights still feels magical. The combination of shadows, warmth, small rituals, and quiet humor made the world feel safe, comforting, and alive in the gentlest way. So as the sun disappears and the lamps flicker, remember, medieval nights were full of simple magic. The world outside slowed, but it didn't stop. The rhythm of life persisted in tiny gestures, soft sounds, and gentle light. And in that rhythm, people found rest, reflection, and connection. Chapter 3. Nighttime in the Village. As darkness fully embraces the village, the world transforms. Streets that were once busy with merchants, farmers, and children playing in the dust now lie quiet, softened by the dim glow of scattered lamps. Cobblestones glisten faintly in the moonlight or under the flicker of torchlight, and every shadow seems longer, stretching across walls and alleyways. This is a village at night. Slower, gentler, yet alive in subtle ways. The rhythm of life changes as night falls. People retreat to their homes, finishing small tasks that must be done before sleep. Fires and hearths crackle softly, filling rooms with warmth and a comforting scent of smoke. Families gather together, some sharing stories, others quietly mending clothes, or preparing simple meals for the following day. Children might whisper secrets to each other, or sneak a last nibble of bread. Even the quiet act of closing shutters and securing doors becomes a part of this nightly ritual, a small, grounding task that marks the shift from day to night. One of the most important figures in the village after sunset was the watchman or night guard, with a lantern in hand and a staff for company. He slowly patrolled the streets, checking gates, keeping an eye out for anything unusual. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no thrilling sword fights, usually, but it was essential, and often it was oddly meditative. The repetition of footsteps on stone, the gentle clink of his bell, the quiet awareness of shadows around him. Occasionally, he might tiptoe past a sleeping dog or stumble over a stray chicken, and if anyone witnessed it, it would be the subject of a few soft chuckles the next day. Even the guardians of the night had moments of humor and humanity. Animals played a subtle but significant role in nighttime life. Dogs patrolled along with their owners or slept in the corners of hearth-lit homes. Cats, ever curious, prowled through shadows, pouncing on anything that stirred, a mouse, a stray leaf, or falling piece of cloth. Chickens and other livestock had already been secured in pens, but their low murmurs sometimes carried faintly in the cool night air. The gentle presence of animals added a layer of life to the village, reminding everyone that the world was never truly silent, even when humans slowed down. Inside homes, life was intimate and personal. Lamps cast soft circles of light, and the walls themselves seemed to breathe with the flickering flames. Families often gathered to work on small projects like weaving, sewing, or carving simple wooden items. The repetitive nature of these tasks had a calming effect, almost meditative, as if the rhythm of hands moving in quiet harmony could soothe the worries of the day. And if the youngest children grew restless, parents or older siblings might tell them small stories, legends, tall tales, or gentle jokes before bedtime. These stories were carefully crafted to engage the imagination without startling anyone, a way to prepare minds for sleep. The streets themselves, though quiet, were far from empty. A lone traveler might make their way through the village, carrying a small pack, the soles of their shoes echoing softly on the cobblestones. The occasional lantern glow might signal someone delivering goods or returning from an evening task. All of these movements were slow, careful, intentional. Unlike the bustling chaos of the day, night had a rhythm all its own, measured in soft sounds, small gestures, and patient steps. Interestingly, nighttime often heightened the sense of community, even in the quietest moments. Neighbors might pause to exchange a word through an open window, laugh softly to share a joke, or help each other secure doors and windows. Though voices were hushed, these small interactions reinforced a sense of connection. In a world without instant communication, the gentle signals of presence, like a faint tap on a wall, the passing of a lantern, or a soft greeting, carried warmth and reassurance. The village night also had its own forms of entertainment, subtle but meaningful. Some families might hum soft tunes, pluck a stringed instrument, or recite gentle poems. Others might engage in quiet games, like riddles or guessing stories. Even small, everyday humor found its way into these moments. A cat jumping on a sleeping dog, a child tripping over a rug, or a candle tipping slightly without spilling. These little events brought lightness and laughter into the otherwise still night, reminding everyone that life could be playful even after sunset. The natural world also played its part. Nighttime brought cooler air, a soft breeze rustling through the trees and fields surrounding the village. Crickets chirped, owls hooted in the distance, and occasionally, the faint sound of water trickling from a stream or well added a gentle rhythm. The combination of human life and nature's presence created a soothing nocturnal symphony, perfect for reflection, meditation, or quiet storytelling. Some villagers used the night for reflection and planning, taking advantage of the calm to think about the day past or the day ahead. Perhaps a farmer considered which crops needed tending tomorrow, or a young apprentice reflected on lessons learned that day. The slower pace of night encouraged focus and thoughtfulness, a sharp contrast to the relentless busyness of daylight. It was a time to pause, breathe, and simply exist within the gentle rhythm of the village. As the hours wore on, most villagers would begin retreating to sleep, wrapping themselves in simple blankets on straw-stuffed mattresses, tucking children close, and listening to the distant night sounds. The dim flicker of a lantern or the gentle glow of the fireplace offered comfort, not fear. Nighttime, in all its shadows and quiet, was a companion, not an enemy. And yet, the night was far from boring. The combination of practical chores, gentle entertainment, quiet reflection, and the subtle humor of everyday life created a layered, calming experience. Medieval nights were alive in a gentle, understated way, full of small movements, soft sounds, and shared warmth. It was a time to slow down, to appreciate simplicity, and to rest within the natural flow of the world. By the time midnight approached, the village had transformed completely. Streets were mostly empty, except for occasional night travelers. Homes glowed softly with candlelight, and families were tucked in for sleep. The world outside seemed hushed, yet somehow vibrant, alive with the subtle rhythms of nocturnal life. Shadows stretched, flames flickered, and the cool night air whispered over rooftops and fields. It was a world of calm, quiet, and gentle magic, a perfect stage for the imagination to wander, dream, and reflect. And so, nighttime in the village was not just a pause between days. It was its own world. Quiet yet alive, simple yet intricate, gentle yet vivid. A place where small rituals, soft sounds, and subtle humor merged to create an environment that was both soothing and memorable. A place where the day's chaos faded, leaving room for calm, reflection, and the gentle rhythm of life under the stars. Chapter 4. Urban Shadows, Towns After Dark. As night settles over the medieval towns, the world changes yet again. Unlike quiet villages, towns are denser, more compact, and full of secrets tucked in narrow streets and alleyways. The hustle of the day gives way to a slower, softer rhythm, but there's always a sense that something might be happening just beyond the flicker of a torch. Not dangerous, necessarily, just intriguing. Streets that were bustling with merchants, carts, and children playing now lie quiet, except for the occasional creak of a wooden shutter or the soft patter of night travelers' shoes on cobblestones. Unlike villages, towns have more structures, taller buildings, and winding alleys. Shadows stretched and twisted in the lantern glow, making familiar streets feel strange and mysterious. It's not hard to imagine that someone walking home might glance over their shoulder, half expecting a trickster or a mischievous neighbor lurking in the darkness. As people finish their last chores, the shops and stalls close one by one. The blacksmith's hammer no longer rang against metal. The baker's oven, now cooled, released faint scents of bread into the night air. Market stalls that had overflowed with goods now sat empty and still, and the faint rustle of discarded straw, or a dropped coin might be the only reminder that life had been bustling just hours before. Towns at night had a way of feeling both deserted and full of secrets at the same time, a paradox that kept the imagination alive, quietly and comfortably. Lighting in towns was a challenge. Most homes and streets relied on oil lamps or simple torches. There were no streetlights stretching along every road like today. If a lamp went out, shadows swallowed everything. That made night travel slow and deliberate. People learned to walk carefully, stepping over uneven stones and avoiding puddles or stray animals. And yet, the dim light added its own charm, bathing the streets in a golden glow, highlighting textures of brick and timber, and casting playful, sometimes humorous shadows. One could almost see cats chasing ghosts in the flicker of torchlight, or perhaps just a pile of hay in the corner. The town watch played a critical role in keeping life orderly. Guards patrolled in pairs, sometimes ringing a bell to mark the hours or alert others of movement. Their lanterns bobbed gently, creating little pools of light amid the dark alleys. Though it might seem intimidating, the watch was mostly reassuring. Villagers and townspeople felt safer knowing someone was observing the streets, ensuring that the night remained calm and controlled. Occasionally, the watchman might trip over a stray bucket or encounter a lazy dog stretched across a doorway, reminders that even medieval nights had their humorous human side. Inside the homes, life was intimate, just as in villages, but with more neighbors nearby. Sounds traveled easily across thin walls, so families learned to keep voices soft. Candles flickered in windows, casting warm light onto narrow streets. Children might peek out to see a friend returning from evening chores, or wave to a neighbor walking past. And in the quiet of these homes, small domestic rituals continued. A pot simmering gently on the hearth, clothes being folded or mended, and the occasional soft song drifting from one room to another. Even in towns, animal life added texture to the night. Cats prowled the rooftops or slipped silently through alleys. Dogs barked at shadows or sniffed curiously at closed doors. Chickens, less common than in villages, might murmur softly in the yard. Horses in stables shifted and snorted as they settled down. These small sounds reminded everyone that the night was alive, even if humans were mostly still. Nighttime also encouraged quiet reflection and imagination. With fewer distractions, townspeople often paused to think about the day or consider what awaited them tomorrow. Maybe a baker reflected on dough rising too fast that morning. Perhaps a tailor pondered how to finish a garment for a hurried customer. Children, tucked in bed, let their minds wander through shadowy streets and imagine adventures. And adults, if they were lucky, might enjoy a brief moment of humor, watching a neighbor's cat knock over a lamp or a lantern swinging unexpectedly in the wind. These little moments of life, soft and playful, made towns at night vibrant in a calm way. Taverns, however, were one of the few places where the town truly came alive after dark. Dimly lit by candles and hearths, taverns offered warmth, conversation, and quiet music. Patrons might laugh softly, share a story, or toast to the day's end. The atmosphere was cozy, with low benches, the smell of ale, and the soft crackle of firewood. Even here, life was slower than daytime, more intimate and reflective, but it was a hub of community, where the night's calm could still be punctuated by gentle laughter and camaraderie. The natural world also played its part in town life at night. Moonlight glinted off rooftops and puddles, faintly illuminating streets. Owls called from nearby trees or bell towers. A soft wind carried distant scents, baking bread from a late-night oven, herbs from a nearby garden, or the earthy aroma of damp stone. Even in the densest urban environments, nature had a presence that added calm, texture, and a quiet rhythm to the evening. As hours passed, the town slowly shifted toward sleep. Families tucked children into beds, households completed their last chores, and the last flickering lamps were extinguished. The town was no longer silent. It hummed softly with the faint sounds of night, alive with subtle movement, distant whispers, and the occasional animal stir. It was a peaceful hum, soothing and consistent, guiding everyone gently toward rest. By midnight, the town was a mix of shadow and warmth. Narrow alleys held secrets, rooftops glimmered in moonlight, and the quiet hum of life continued at a slow, measured pace. Urban nights, like village nights, were both alive and gentle, a space for reflection, intimacy, and small moments of joy. Even in the shadows, there was humor, warmth, and a sense of connection, a shared nocturnal experience that bound the people together, quietly and softly. The town after sunset was a world unto itself, a delicate balance of shadows and light, work and rest, solitude and community. Walking its streets, one could feel the heartbeat of medieval life, slowed and softened, leaving space for reflection, comfort, and gentle amusement. It was a world that invited imagination, encouraged mindfulness, and, in its subtle rhythms, promised the calm of a night well spent. Chapter 5. Lighting the Night. As darkness deepens over medieval towns and villages, one of the most crucial and surprisingly charming parts of nightlife comes into focus: lighting the night. Unlike our world today, where a flick of switch banishes shadows instantly, medieval nights were soft, warm, and often a little unpredictable. Light didn't just illuminate. It shaped the mood, the movement, and even the imagination of those wandering through streets or homes. Most medieval homes were lit with candles or oil lamps, each one a small, fragile beacon. Candles were usually made from tallow, which is animal fat, or beeswax for the wealthier households. Tallow candles had a slightly smoky smell that could fill a room, and the flame often flickered, dancing in tune with the slightest breeze. A single candle could cast long, quivering shadows, making ordinary objects suddenly feel animated. Shoes in the corner might resemble small animals. A jug on the table might look like it was stretching or moving. And cats. Oh, cats absolutely loved this time. They would stalk shadows as if engaged in a secret nighttime ritual of their own. Oil lamps were common too. Clay or bronze vessels filled with oil, with a small wick, gave off a steadier light than tallow candles. Some towns had street lamps outside wealthier homes or important buildings, but most streets were left largely in shadow. Traveling after dark was deliberate work. One misstep could mean stepping on a sleeping dog, tripping over a stray basket, or plunging into a puddle unnoticed. That's probably why medieval people moved slowly, carefully, even gracefully. It wasn't fear, it was mindfulness in action. Lighting wasn't just functional, it was symbolic. Fire represented life, warmth, and protection. To go to sleep without lighting a candle was to invite uncertainty, both practical and spiritual. Candles often burned at altars and homes, reminding everyone of God's presence or invoking protection through the night. Small households might have a single candle on a table, a quiet companion for reading, sewing, or just watching the shadows dance. Wealthier families might fill entire rooms with light from multiple candles, though even then, shadows remained, stretching, retreating, and performing their quiet, nightly theater. Beyond homes, streets and public spaces relied on simple lighting methods too. Torches were often used in wealthier towns for patrols, or for moving goods after dark. They flickered in the wind, casting long, wavering lines along cobblestones. A passing torch could transform a narrow alley into a stage for imagination. An ordinary doorstep suddenly became the scene of a mini-adventure, or a pile of crates turned into a fortress in a child's mind. The playfulness of shadows was part of the charm of medieval nights. Even simple daily tasks were affected by light, or the lack of it. Mending clothes, carving wooden tools, or preparing meals for the next day had to be done near the hearth or by candlelight. Eyes strained slightly, hands moved carefully, and everything slowed. In fact, the dimness encouraged focus. One could almost feel a calm settling over the entire household as everyone synchronized to the gentle rhythm of light and shadow. It was slow, methodical, and soothing. Some households got creative with lighting tricks. Reflective surfaces like polished metal or mirrors could redirect candlelight to brighten corners. Simple screens or lantern covers softened harsh glows, spreading warmth without glare. And occasionally, someone would playfully move a candle or lamp to create moving shadows on the wall. Perhaps a small figure dancing or a cat leaping at the flicker. Even in a practical world, humor and creativity found their place in the dance of lights and shadows. Lighting also had its challenges. Candles could drip wax everywhere. Oil lamps might spill if handled carelessly. And one wrong move could mean a small fire. Nothing catastrophic, usually, but enough to prompt a startled yelp and a scramble to set things right. These minor mishaps became part of the lore of night. Stories to be retold quietly, with a chuckle around the hearth. And they reminded everyone that, even centuries ago, life after sunset could be unpredictable, playful, and human. But the beauty of medieval lighting was not just its practicality or humor. It was its mood. A candlelit room feels different than a brightly lit one. Shadows curve gently along walls, objects take on softer edges, and every flicker invites imagination. Families would sit around fires and candles, telling stories, quietly singing or simply observing the play of light. It was an intimate form of entertainment, a way to slow the day, reflect, and bond without speaking loudly or rushing. Lighting the night also carried a subtle sense of community and care. Neighbors might share candles or oil if someone ran out. A street lantern could guide travelers safely to their homes. Even the soft glow from a distant window could provide reassurance, a silent signal that life continued, that warmth existed, and that the village or town was alive, even after sunset. Shadows weren't empty. They were shared spaces, a soft reminder of human presence and connection. In castles and grander homes, lighting became more elaborate but retained the same principles. Multiple candles and candelabras or wall sconces illuminated large halls, while smaller lamps highlighted more intimate corners. Torches lined corridors for guards or servants moving at night. Even there, shadows persisted, forming hidden alcoves or soft corners where quiet moments could be stolen. And yes, even in grander spaces, someone might stumble over a carpet or a cat would leap into the light, reminding everyone that life was playful, no matter the wealth or size of the home. By the time most of the village or town was ready to sleep, the lights had served their purpose. The hearth and candles had warm bodies and spirits. Shadows had danced, entertained, and guided. The streets, dimly lit or fully dark, waited for the quietest hours of night to unfold. Light wasn't just a tool. It was part of the experience of medieval evenings, shaping how people moved, felt, and imagined. In short, lighting the night in medieval times was a gentle, mindful affair. It was slow, creative, and sometimes funny. It was functional, practical, and symbolic. And most importantly, it shaped the feeling of night itself. Soft, warm, alive in small ways, and always inviting curiosity, reflection, and calm. Every flicker a candle or torch whispered the same message. Life continues gently, even when the sun is gone. And that's the magic of medieval lighting. It wasn't just about seeing in the dark. It was about feeling the dark, sharing warmth, and letting shadows tell their own quiet stories. The night was alive, comforting, and ready for dreams. Chapter 6. Sound of Medieval Nights. As the lights dim and shadows stretch across villages and towns, another sense takes the spotlight. Sound. In medieval nights, the world was alive with quiet noises, subtle rhythms, and occasional surprises. Unlike the hum of modern life, medieval nights were slower, softer, and a little mysterious. And if you listen carefully, they told stories of their own. One of the first sounds you'd notice is the wind. It rustles through narrow alleys, bends the tops of trees in nearby forests, and sneaks between the cracks of wooden houses. It might whistle softly, almost like a tune, or occasionally sigh against a door or shutter. People often listened to it as a companion, a gentle presence reminding them that the world outside their homes was still alive, even as everything inside settled down. Then there were the animals. Cats prowl with graceful stealth, ears twitching at the slightest rustle. Dogs shifted in the hearth corners, sometimes barking at a shadow or snoring softly. Livestock murmured from pens, the low hum of cows or the cluck of chickens drifting through the cool night air. Even the occasional owl added a melodic note, hooting somewhere in a nearby tree. These sounds were constant, comforting, and alive in a gentle way, like a nocturnal symphony. Humans, of course, added their own layer. The night watch or town guard patrolled slowly, their boots echoing softly on cobblestones. A bell might ring occasionally, marking the hours or signaling movement. Inside homes, families whispered to one another, mended clothes, hummed lullabies, or quietly finished chores. Every sound was deliberate, slowed by candlelight and fatigue, creating a rhythm unique to medieval nights. Even small domestic mishaps became part of the soundscape, and sometimes the humor. A cat might knock over a candle, sending a soft thump across the room. A child could giggle too loudly while sneaking a bite of bread, startling a dog into barking. Someone might drop a spoon or rattle a pot, prompting a quiet chorus of murmurs or laughter. These small human sounds added texture to the otherwise calm night, reminding everyone that life was alive, playful, and imperfect. In villages, the natural environment contributed a lot to nighttime sounds. Streams gurgled gently. Leaves rustled as small animals moved through undergrowth, and the occasional owl or fox called from a distance. There was also the subtle hum of insects, crickets chirping in steady rhythm, adding a soft, natural percussion to the night. People adapted to these sounds, letting them lull them into calm reflection, and sometimes even interpreting them as part of their stories or beliefs. The interior of homes had its own quiet symphony, the crackle of firewood, the hiss of a candle flame, or the gentle creak of wooden floors. All of these sounds were familiar, almost comforting. Children learned to recognize them. The subtle difference between a dog stretching and a cat exploring, or the soft sigh of a parent settling down for the night. These noises were background music to medieval nights, small cues that life was proceeding gently, safely, and predictably. Even in towns, where more people and structures created more echoes, nighttime was calm. Footsteps carried farther across narrow streets, lanterns cast moving shadows, and doors creaked as guards or late travelers passed. Occasionally, laughter or a whisper traveled across alleyways, giving life to otherwise empty spaces. Unlike modern noise, these sounds were sparse and intentional, leaving room for reflection, imagination, and rest. Sometimes, medieval people used sound purposefully. Bells marked the hours or called people to prayer. A dog's bark could warn of danger or simply signal the presence of someone coming. Even children made soft noises while playing quiet games indoors, their laughter blending with the sound of fire and conversation. Sound in medieval nights wasn't just incidental. It was part of the rhythm, guiding movement, signaling presence, and enriching the evening experience. What's remarkable is how sound shaped perception. In dim candlelight, the faintest creak could spark imagination. A shadowed alley paired with a rustle of leaves might feel mysterious, but rarely frightening. More like an invitation to observe, to imagine, and to connect with the world. Medieval nights allowed people to experience sound slowly, appreciating the small details, often lost in the rush of daytime. Even humor came through sound. A clumsy cat, a child's squeaky toy, or a dropped spoon might cause gentle laughter that echoed softly through the house. Some sounds were shared across the community, connecting people even when they were alone. Church bells chimed across villages and towns, a reminder of spiritual presence and temporal order. The distant murmur of neighbors preparing for sleep or finishing chores carried comfort, signaling life continued peacefully around you. Even the quiet patter of rain on roofs became part of the shared nocturnal experience, soothing and rhythmic, connecting people to nature and to each other. As hours passed, the symphony of night became softer, gentler, slower. The louder, more deliberate sounds, footsteps, doors, voices, faded. Fires burned lower. Animals nestled down. Crickets chirped steadily. Every sound worked together to lull inhabitants toward rest, a natural meditation that prepared both body and mind for sleep. In a world without modern distractions, this auditory rhythm was essential. It guided people through the night, calmed fears, and encouraged reflection and imagination. Even in the quietest moments, small moment of humor, and life persisted. A cat might chase a flickering shadow across the floor. A dog might snore loudly enough to wake a family member, or a lantern might sway and make the walls appear alive. These little sounds reminded everyone that medieval nights were alive, playful, and deeply human. Shadows might dominate the visual field, but sound filled the air, keeping hearts and minds engaged in a soft, comforting way. By the time midnight approached, the night's auditory world had settled into a rhythm of calm and gentle activity. Fires burned low, lamps flickered softly, and the village or town lay in a hushed, secure quiet. Every whisper, every rustle, every distant bark or owl call became part of a carefully orchestrated lullaby, guiding people toward rest. The sound of medieval nights was alive, delicate, playful, and entirely calming, a perfect backdrop for reflection, dreams, and sleep. In the end, the sounds of medieval nights were not merely background. They were an essential part of the night itself. They shaped perception, set rhythms, and added warmth, humor, and intimacy to lives lived without the constant hum of modern noise. To walk through a medieval village or town at night was to be immersed in a symphony of subtle, comforting sounds, a world alive in its calm, deliberate way, inviting imagination, connection, and rest. Chapter 7. Nighttime Work. Even as shadows stretch across villages and towns, life doesn't completely stop. For many medieval people, night was not only a time for rest, it was also a time for work that couldn't wait until morning. And while it might sound exhausting, much of this labor had a gentle rhythm, almost meditative, blending seamlessly with the soft hum of nighttime life. In villages, farmers had evening chores that were quiet but essential. Animals had to be fed, pens checked, an occasional goat or wandering sheep returned to its rightful place. Milking might continue for a few late cows, the soft squelch of milk in wooden buckets, blending with the quiet chorus of insects outside. These tasks weren't hurried. They were deliberate, performed under the flicker of candlelight or the last glow of twilight. There was a calmness to it, a slow dance between humans, animals, and the night itself. Some trades also carried into the evening. Bakers might finish baking bread for the next day, carefully watching over hot ovens. Blacksmiths could work quietly on small repairs or intricate tools, the rhythmic tap of hammer on metal echoing softly in workshops. Even simple tasks like weaving or sewing stretched into the night, hands moving carefully under lantern light. Unlike the busy, chaotic pace of daytime, nighttime work was slower, reflective, and oddly comforting. In towns, nighttime work often focused on trade and preparation. Merchants might sort goods, mend cloth, or organize stalls for early morning customers. Watchmen and town guards patrolled streets, a lantern in hand, keeping an eye out for trouble, or, at the very least, making sure no stray animals or mischievous neighbors caused mischief. And even these tasks had a rhythm, a pulse that matched the slower tempo of night. Footsteps, clinks of tools, and quiet murmurs created a subtle soundtrack, keeping the town alive while everyone else rested. Nighttime work also had a social aspect. In larger households or guilds, people often worked together. A baker might have an apprentice stirring dough, while a sibling swept the floor and a cat prowled nearby, swatting at shadows. Even in work, There was room for humor. A dropped spoon, a knocked-over candle, a cat darting underfoot. Life after sunset wasn't solemn. It was practical, alive, and lightly playful. Some work at night was ceremonial or seasonal. For instance, harvest seasons demanded extra hours, with villagers staying late to gather crops or process food. Late-night vigils, particularly around festivals or religious events, required preparation that spilled into the evening. People might carry lanterns into fields or halls, the soft light illuminating furrowed brows, careful hands, and occasional laughter when someone misstepped. Even strenuous work felt gentler under the cloak of night, slowed by darkness and soft sounds. In castles, nighttime work had its own rhythm. Servants moved quietly along corridors, bringing food to late workers or tidying rooms. Guards patrolled dark halls, torches in hand, occasionally muttering a reminder or tripping over a stray rug. Proof that humor existed even behind stone walls. And nobles? Some might review scrolls, finish correspondence, or quietly confer with advisors, while the rest of the household moved around them with practiced ease. Even in the grandest homes, the night had a calm, deliberate tempo, encouraging focus, reflection, and soft interactions. Interestingly, nighttime labor shaped perception of the night itself. Tasks performed in candlelight or moonlight gave ordinary objects a new character. A basket of apples might glimmer warmly in the firelight. A broom in a corner could resemble a figure from a story. Tools cast long shadows across workshop walls, and even the soft creak of a floorboard added drama to a quiet, productive scene. Medieval nights invited the imagination, even while people worked. Quiet humor persisted throughout all nighttime tasks. A child might sneak into a workshop to watch the baker, startling a cat and sending it darting across the room. A blacksmith might accidentally drop a tool with a loud clang, earning a soft chuckle from an apprentice. Even the night watch occasionally tripped over uneven cobblestones, muttering and laughing at themselves. These small moments reminded everyone that work, even after sunset, didn't have to be solemn. It could be light-hearted, human, and comforting. Nighttime work also taught patience and mindfulness. In the soft glow of lanterns or candlelight, tasks moved slower, hands and eyes adjusted carefully, and mistakes were less costly when everyone remained calm. There was time to notice details: the gleam of metal, the texture of cloth, the movement of a sleeping cat. Work became a meditation, blending productivity, reflection, and subtle amusement. By the time most people finished their nighttime labor, the village or town was quiet again. Fires burned low, lanterns flickered gently, and the world was ready for rest. Work had not just provided sustenance or completed tasks. It had reinforced rhythm, connection, and a sense of calm. In medieval nights, labor and relaxation were not opposites. They were complementary, each helping to structure life, reflection, and imagination. And so, the night moved forward, gentle, purposeful, and full of life. Every step, every sound, every small gesture work became part of the nocturnal rhythm. Unlike the frantic pace of day, nighttime work was a dance of shadow and light, human and animal, focus and playful accidents. It was a time when life slowed, allowing for reflection, humor, and subtle joy. By the end of these tasks, families, towns, and castles alike could finally settle into sleep, bodies tired but minds calm. Nighttime work wasn't a burden. It was part of the rhythm of life, blending practicality with subtle magic, humor, and a deep sense of human connection. The world after sunset was alive, gentle, and full of small stories waiting to be discovered, appreciated, and remembered. Chapter 8. Medieval Taverns After Dark. As night deepens, one of the most lively corners of medieval towns comes to life. The tavern. Unlike quiet homes or shadowed streets, taverns were pockets of warmth, laughter, and community. They offered a space where the day's work, worries, and gossip could be set aside, replaced with stories, soft music, and the gentle hum of human connection. Picture stepping through a wooden door into the tavern. The first thing you notice is a smell, a mix of roasted meat, warm bread, spilled ale, and the faint tang of smoke from the fireplace. The air feels heavy but welcoming, the kind of atmosphere that nudges you to relax, exhale, and sink into the comfort of the room. The hearth glows steadily, casting soft shadows that dance on timber beams and rough-hewn walls, turning the space into a cozy labyrinth of light and dark. Seating was simple, rough benches and wooden tables, often shared with strangers. A family might sit near a merchant, an apprentice, or a traveling minstrel. Conversations flowed easily, quiet but alive. People shared tales of the day, small victories, humorous accidents, or warnings about what to avoid tomorrow. And even in the dim candlelight, gestures and expressions carried meaning. Raising a mug to signal agreement, nudging a friend to join a story, or rolling eyes at a neighbor's harmless brag. Ale was the main attraction. Taverns offered pints of fermented barley or mead, often poured from wooden mugs or carved cups. It wasn't fancy, but it was comforting, warming the belly and loosening lips for conversation. And because it was shared in a communal space, drinking became a ritual of connection, a way to mark the end of work and the beginning of relaxation. Stories flowed, laughter bubbled up, and even small disagreements were softened by the gentle glow of candlelight and the faint crackle of firewood. Music often accompanied tavern life. A traveling minstrel might strum a lute softly in the corner, or a group of locals might hum together. The melodies weren't loud or demanding. They were gentle companions, weaving through conversations, punctuating jokes, and emphasizing stories. Even the occasional off-key note added charm, a reminder that this wasn't performance for royalty. It was life lived simply, in community, with warmth and humor. Taverns also offered a place for quiet mischief. Someone might play a small prank, like swapping mugs, or pretend to spill ale, prompting a ripple of laughter. Children were rare but occasionally present, quietly observing the adults' antics or giggling at shadows cast by the fire. Cats, if allowed inside, prowled the room, chasing the flicker of candle flames or weaving around legs. Even in the cozy glow of taverns, the night retained its playful unpredictability. Unlike today's bustling bars, medieval taverns were more intimate and slower paced. People weren't drowning out the night with loud noise. They were immersed in it. Conversations moved gently. Sounds were soft and deliberate, and each moment unfolded at its own unhurried rhythm. This intimacy made taverns ideal for storytelling, the backbone of medieval social life. Tales of heroes' mischief, strange encounters, or local legends were shared and adapted in real time, shaped by the audience and enhanced by the flicker of light and the warmth of drink. Even practical activities happened in taverns. Merchants might tally accounts, apprentices could finish minor tasks, or neighbors exchanged small goods or news. The tavern was a crossroads, where the day's labor ended and the night's reflection, humor, and creativity began. Every corner of the room seemed alive with subtle motion, laughter, and purpose, a space where life after sunset took on texture, rhythm, and depth. The sounds of taverns were distinctive. Soft footfalls on timber floors, mugs clinking gently, the murmur of conversation, a lute string plucked deliberately, or the occasional hearty laugh, all combined into a gentle, comforting symphony. It was alive but never overwhelming, guiding the imagination while keeping bodies and spirits grounded. Even minor mishaps, like a spilled drink or a cat leaping for attention, became part of the charm, reminding everyone that life was playful, human, and unpredictable. Lighting played a special role here, too. Candles on tables and sconces on walls created intimate pockets of glow. Shadows stretched across beams and rafters, and the hearth cast a steady, welcoming light. Patrons became part of a larger tapestry. Faces illuminated softly, movements mirrored in reflections, and flickering shadows animated every corner. The interplay of light and dark enhanced storytelling, subtle humor, and the overall calm, immersive atmosphere. By late evening, the tavern became a sanctuary of comfort and reflection. Workers from day labor, travelers, and locals all shared the same space, winding down from a long day. Stories slowed, laughter softened, and people gradually retreated to their homes or beds. Yet even as the room emptied, the warmth lingered. The smell of bread, the last flicker of candlelight, and a faint echo of music carried into the quiet streets outside. Taverns remind us that medieval nights were not silent or lonely. They were alive with human presence, humor, and connection. Whether in a bustling town or a quiet village, these spaces offered warmth, companionship, and the gentle rhythms that made life after sunset comforting, reflective, and sometimes delightfully unpredictable. In essence, medieval taverns were more than places to drink. They were microcosms of night itself, cozy, shadowed, full of stories, playful humor, and human warmth. They carried the spirit of the evening forward, blending light, sound, and life into a gentle, immersive experience that lingered long after the last patron had left. Chapter 9, Midnight Mysteries. Midnight in the medieval world is a different kind of magic. The day is gone, the hearts are dimming, and most villagers and townsfolk are tucked into their beds. Yet, despite the quiet, the night is far from empty. Shadows stretch longer, lanterns flicker softly, and the world seems to hold its breath. Midnight is the hour of curiosity, imagination, and subtle wonder, where ordinary life takes on a slightly mysterious, sometimes playful edge. In villages, midnight is a calm but lively time. The animals, cats prowling rooftops, dogs shifting their sleep, or the occasional wandering fox, are alive and alert. Even the livestock make small noises, the low murmur of cows or the gentle clucking of chickens tucked into pens. Every sound carries farther in the stillness, and every shadow seems to move a mind of its own. For medieval eyes, attuned to subtle details, this hour offered endless fascination. Towns were slightly different. The narrow streets and tall buildings created echoes, making every footstep or rattle of shudder feel more pronounced. Lanterns swayed with the wind, creating dancing shadows that could make a pile of crates look like a lurking figure, or a bundle of cloth appear like a sleeping child. For someone awake at midnight, the world felt both intimate and slightly mysterious, encouraging imagination without fear. Midnight was also the time for storytelling and quiet entertainment. Families huddled by dim hearths or in small taverns would whisper tales of heroes, ghosts, or local legends. The flicker of candlelight enhanced the drama. A shadow across the wall could be a phantom. A stack of firewood became a fortress, and the faint sound of wind might be interpreted as spirits moving outside. Children and adults alike were drawn into these narratives, balancing suspense with gentle humor. A cat might leap a shadow, earning a quiet laugh, or someone might exaggerate a creak for effect. The night was alive with playful imagination. Beyond storytelling, midnight invited quiet exploration. Villagers might fetch water, tend animals, or check on tools left outside. Lanterns offered gentle guidance, revealing textures and movements unnoticed in daylight. A simple trip across the village could feel like an adventure. The soft crunch of boots on gravel, the sway of branches in the moonlight, or the faint rustle of a small animal in the undergrowth. Every step and sound felt heightened, sharpening attention while calming the mind. Even in castles and grand homes, midnight had its rituals. Servants moved quietly through corridors, tending fires or bringing late-night meals. Guards patrolled stone hallways, their lanterns casting flickering light on tapestries and rugs. Nobles might review documents, write letters, or hold quiet conversations, all under soft candlelight. Even here, the night retained its playful elements. A cat might chase a dangling tassel, or a servant might stumble over a rug, earning a muffled laugh. The hour was serious enough for responsibility, but gentle enough for subtle amusement. A curious feature of midnight was its connection to mystery and the unknown. Shadows seemed deeper, corners more secretive. A soft rustle of leaves, a distant hoot, or the shifting wind could spark stories or speculation. Some medieval people believed spirits or mystical forces moved more freely at night, while others simply appreciated the calm and the chance to notice details missed during the day. Either way, midnight sharpened the senses and invited reflection. Children especially experienced midnight through imagination. Shadows cast by flickering flames could transform a simple chair into a throne, a broomstick into a wandering knight, or a jug into a lurking monster. Whispered tales, playful games, and the gentle presence of family members made the night a safe space for exploration. Even if they didn't see actual magic, the sense of wonder and curiosity was very real. The night was also alive with quiet, deliberate sounds. A night watch's slow footsteps, a distant bell marking the hours, or the soft clink of a tool left outside became part of a nocturnal symphony. Unlike the clamor of daytime, these sounds were calming and reassuring, signaling that life continued and that the village or town remained orderly. Even minor accidents, like a cat knocking over a small object or a lantern flickering wildly, added charm and gentle humor. Life was alive, but slow, deliberate, and comforting. Nature itself contributed to the mystery of midnight. The rustle of trees, the ripple of a stream, or the faint calls of night birds and insects enriched the auditory landscape. The combination of human, animal, and natural sounds created layers of life that could be both soothing and intriguing. A sudden gust of wind might make a loose shutter clatter, prompting curiosity or a soft laugh. Shadows and sounds collaborated to make midnight feel like a small adventure, even for those simply walking from one house to another. By the stroke of midnight, the world was suspended in a gentle, reflective pause. Streets were mostly empty, homes glowed faintly with remaining candlelight, and most animals had settled down. Yet the world was far from silent. Each sound, the creak of timber, the soft thump of an animal, the distant murmur of water, added depth and texture to the night. The darkness itself became a canvas, inviting imagination, reflection, and a heightened awareness of one's surroundings. Even humor found its way into midnight. A stumbling guard, a cat's sudden leap, or the accidental clang of a tool all reminded villagers that life after sunset was playful as well as mysterious. Shadows might twist, animals might move unpredictably, and every small event could spark a story or a laugh. Life at midnight was alive, human, and gentle, a delicate balance between observation and imagination. In essence, midnight in medieval times was not merely the absence of day. It was a rich, immersive experience. Shadows, light, and sound combined to create an environment full of subtle magic and calm energy. People were alert, animals were active, and the world moved at a slower, more deliberate rhythm. It was a time for reflection, exploration, gentle humor, and storytelling, a space where the ordinary could feel extraordinary, and imagination could wander safely under the soft glow of candlelight and lanterns. By embracing the quiet, the subtle sounds, and the playful mysteries of midnight, villagers and townsfolk alike found comfort, curiosity, and connection. Even the deepest, darkest hours were not empty. They were full of life, subtle humor, and gentle adventure. The mysteries of midnight were never frightening. They were invitations to slow down, observe, imagine, and feel the night in all its calm, intricate beauty. Medieval nights, especially at midnight, were alive in ways that modern life often forgets. The combination of shadows, gentle sounds, and small, playful surprises created a unique atmosphere, both comforting and intriguing. Midnight was a time to notice, to reflect, and to engage with the world in a calm, deliberate way. In the quiet of these hours, life after sunset revealed its subtle magic, reminding everyone that the night itself tells stories. Stories of life, humor, imagination, and quiet wonder. Chapter 10. Dreams and Sleep. As the medieval night stretches on in villages and towns grow quiet, the final act of the evening begins. Sleep. After a day of work, chores, storytelling, and occasional mischief, people finally retreat into the calm of their homes, settling into beds made of straw, hay, or feather-stuffed mattresses for those lucky enough. Sleep was not merely a biological necessity. It was a ritual, a reflection, and a bridge to imagination, all wrapped in the gentle rhythms of the night. In most homes, beds were simple but practical. A straw or hay mattress provided a modest cushion, sometimes lined with cloth for extra comfort. Wealthier families had feather beds, covered in blankets or quilts. Curtains or wooden panels around the bed created privacy, warmth, and a sense of security. Even in humble rooms, sleep was approached with care. Blankets tucked, fires safely dampened, and a small candle or lamp occasionally left burning for comfort or in case of a nighttime errand. Before sleep, many medieval people followed small nighttime rituals. They might wash their hands, faces, or feet, signaling the body and mind that the day was ending. Families often said prayers, asking for protection to the night, or giving thanks for the day's safety. Children might be sung a soft lullaby, or parents might whisper one last story. These rituals weren't just practical. They were soothing, grounding, and a gentle transition from wakefulness to sleep. Sleep was closely intertwined with reflection and imagination. In the soft glow of candlelight or the dying embers of the hearth, people often thought back on the day. Children replayed stories, imagining heroes, monsters, and secret adventures. Adults reflected on tasks completed, small frustrations, or tiny victories. The quiet of night allowed the mind to wander gently, creating narratives in miniature, while the body relaxed into rest. Animals played a role in this nightly rhythm. Cats curled up on mats or near fires, dogs rested in corners, and livestock settled in pens. Their soft breathing, occasional movements, and gentle nudges added texture to the room. Humans and animals shared the rhythm of the night. People preparing for sleep, animals nesting, and all participating in the gentle nocturnal harmony. The faint sound of cats stretching, a dog sighing, or straw shifting under weight became part of the soothing nocturnal soundtrack. Medieval dreams were influenced by both experience and imagination. Tales told before bed often drifted into sleep, transforming into fantastical adventures or moral lessons. A child who heard a story about a clever fox might dream of exploring forests alongside it. An adult who spent the day at the forge might dream of crafting intricate miniature worlds. Dreams were not just entertainment. They reflected memory, emotion, and creativity, guided by the soft rhythms of night. Sleep in the medieval world was often communal. Families shared rooms, sometimes even beds, for warmth and security. Neighbors could hear each other through thin walls. The murmur of conversation winding down, a cough, or the gentle creak of wooden floors. These small sounds were comforting reminders that life continued beyond each household. Even in darkness, there was connection, a subtle symphony of human presence blending with the rhythm of sleep. In towns and castles, nighttime activity continued in subtle ways. Guards patrolled quietly, lanterns swayed softly, and servants moved between rooms to ensure fires were low or that anyone in need was attended to. Even minor mishaps, like a cup tipping or a floorboard creaking, added texture and gentle humor, showing that life, even during sleep, was alive and human. Many medieval people believed that sleep and dreams could bring insight, guidance, or warnings. Dreams might be interpreted as messages from God, omens, or prompts for reflection. People reflected on dreams upon waking, searching for meaning or advice. Even without mystical interpretation, dreams provided a space for imagination, allowing adults and children alike to explore fears, joys, and creative ideas safely. Nighttime offered a natural canvas for mental and emotional exploration, softened by the quiet and stillness. Sleep patterns often differed from modern expectations. Many people practiced segmented sleep, resting for a few hours, waking briefly, then returning to sleep. These waking periods were used for reflection, prayer, or small household tasks. A soft lantern glow illuminated someone checking a fire, tending animals, or completing chores left from earlier in the day. These moments reinforced the slow, deliberate rhythm of medieval life, making sleep a flexible, restorative, and reflective process. Outside, the natural world contributed to the night's calm. The wind whispered through trees, streams babbled softly, and insect provided a quiet, constant hum. Owls at night, birds occasionally called from a distance. People slept within this layered soundscape, their dreams entwined with the gentle rhythms of nature, creating a sense of connection and tranquility. Even minor disturbances, a gust of wind, a shifting animal, or a flickering candle, added life and subtle amusement, enhancing the night's charm. Even humor found its way into bedtime. Cats might leap onto warm straw, dogs snore loudly, or children tumble from mattresses with small thump. These minor disruptions reminded villagers that life after sunset remained playful, unpredictable, and gentle. Sleep, while restorative, was never dull. Small surprises made the night dynamic and alive. By the middle of the night, most villages and towns had settled into a gentle rhythm of rest. Hearths glowed faintly, lanterns flickered softly, and the faint movement of animals and humans created a soft lullaby. Sleep allowed the body to recover, the mind to wander, and imagination to flourish. Even the simplest rooms with straw beds and candlelight became spaces of comfort, reflection, and gentle creativity. Medieval nights culminating in sleep remind us that rest is more than physical recovery. It is a chance for reflection, imagination, and connection to life's natural rhythms. As the day fades, the sounds and shadows of night provide space for dreams, subconscious processing, and mental exploration. Darkness becomes a canvas for imagination, and the quiet world offers a safe, playful, and restorative environment. As dawn approaches, dreams dissolve into awareness, and the first stirrings of a new day quietly begin. Sleep bridges the calm of night with the activity of day, preparing medieval people to face life with renewed energy. Nighttime was not merely darkness to endure. It was a space for reflection, creativity, humor, and subtle magic. Every flicker of light, shadow, and whisper contributed to the experience of life after sunset. By the time the village or town prepares to awaken, people have journeyed through the night in dreams, rest, and imagination. Sleep nurtured creativity, reflection, and calm. It allowed medieval people to approach the day with balance, showing that darkness, far from being empty, was alive, playful, and deeply human. Even the quietest hours held life, stories, and gentle wonder. Chapter 11. Nighttime Animals. As the medieval night deepens and humans settle into their homes, the world outside comes alive in subtle ways. While villagers and townsfolk sleep or reflect quietly, animals of all kinds emerge, carrying out their nightly routines. These creatures were an essential part of the nocturnal rhythm, adding sound, movement, and gentle charm to the darkness. In the countryside, farm animals were among the first to settle for the night. Cows rested in pens, chewing cud and occasionally shifting for comfort. Sheep huddled together, their soft bleats mixing with the rustle of straw. Goats, curious and mischievous, sometimes nudged gates or leaped on low walls, creating tiny commotions that drew soft laughter from anyone still awake. Pigs grunted and shuffled, rooting through hay or leftovers, their playful antics a reminder that even in quiet hours, life remained lively. Cats were the true rulers of the night. They prowled rooftops, darted along alleys, and silently patrolled barns, their glowing eyes reflecting lanterns or moonlight. Villagers valued cats for keeping rodent away, but their nocturnal antics added unexpected amusement. A sudden leap or a soft crash could send a household into quiet chuckles, and the mysterious movements of these cats inspired stories and playful speculation. Their independence and stealth made them both helpers and entertainers in the night. Dogs, meanwhile, had slightly different roles. Many slept beside their owners, offering warmth and companionship. Others patrolled perimeters, alert to wandering foxes or distant noises. A snore might add rhythm to the night, while a bark could serve as both warning and gentle amusement. Dogs, like cats, reminded people that the night was shared, active, and sometimes unpredictable. The surrounding fields and forests hosted wild nocturnal creatures as well. Owls glided silently through trees, punctuating the darkness with soft calls. Bats flitted overhead, catching insects in midair. Hedgehogs shuffled among leaves, searching for food. Foxes prowled quietly, their amber eyes gleaming in moonlight, while wolves, usually distant, might occasionally howl from the edges of forests. Every movement added to the layered sounds of the night, creating a natural symphony that complemented human activity, or the lack of it. Even insects contributed. Crickets chirped steadily, beetles scuttled through leaf litter, and moths fluttered near lanterns. Their subtle sounds enriched the ambient texture of night, reminding villagers that even the smallest creatures participated in the life of darkness. In towns, nocturnal animals behaved a bit differently. Cats prowled rooftops and storerooms, hunting rats that threatened food stores. Rats were especially active, slipping through narrow cracks and scuttling across floors, prompting annoyance but also curiosity. Dogs, often resting near doors or tavern entrances, patrolled softly, alert to both danger and mischief. Birds that stayed awake added occasional background calls, and frogs croaking in nearby streams contributed to the gentle symphony. Even in urban spaces, the night was alive and textured. Animals were more than functional. They were companions and participants in the rhythm of the night. A cat chasing a shadow could make children laugh quietly. A dog barking at a rustle became a story for the morning. Livestock displayed personalities. A stubborn goat resisting penning, a cow nudging a friend, or a pig rooting around playfully. Medieval people observed and interacted with these nocturnal creatures, integrating them into the stories, rhythms, and humor of nightly life. Some animals also carried symbolic or superstitious significance. Owls were linked to wisdom or omens, while black cats sometimes inspired caution or playful fear. Bats, with their silent movements, were mysterious and intriguing, Villagers often wove these observations into bedtime stories or dreams, blending superstition, curiosity, and humor into the night's narrative. For children, nighttime animals fueled imagination and storytelling. Shadows cast by a prowling cat could transform into heroes or monsters in whispered tales. The hoot of an owl might signal secret adventures in nearby forests. Even small movements, like rats scuttling across a floor or leaves rustling outside, inspired curiosity rather than fear. Nighttime became a space where learning, observation, and imagination converged naturally. Some animals actively contributed to practical tasks during the night. Cats hunted rodents that threatened food stores. Dogs patrolled homes and barns, alerting humans to potential danger. Certain birds hinted at weather changes or the approach of dawn. The combined activity of humans, domestic animals, and wildlife created a balanced, living ecosystem at night, where each creature played its part. The sounds of nighttime animals formed a gentle symphony. Cats purred softly, dogs breathed or barked, sheep bleated lowly, and owls called in the distance. Insects added a constant, rhythmic background. Unlike the chaos of daytime, these sounds were soothing and immersive, reminding villagers that life continued quietly beyond their homes. Humor and unpredictability were also present. Cats might knock over a pot while chasing a shadow. Dogs might startle a child asleep on a straw bed. Goats occasionally escaped pens, prompting quiet chases. These minor disruptions reminded people that the night, while calm, was alive and playful. Even the darkest hours had gentle surprises. By the deepest part of the night, humans and animals settled into their respective rhythms. Fires burned low, lanterns flickered, and most movement slowed. Owls hunted, bats flew, foxes prowled, and cats watched silently. Dogs rested but remained alert. Insects continued their soft activity. The night was layered, immersive, and parallel to human sleep, full of gentle mischief, subtle sound, and quiet wonder. Animals shaped how humans experienced the night. Their movements, sounds, and occasional antics influenced perception, imagination, and storytelling. Shadows might be cats, small birds, or playful rats. Rustling straw could indicate a goat or a mouse. Villagers observed, interpreted, and wove these nightly signs into stories and dreams, blending humor, curiosity, and gentle fascination. As dawn approached, nocturnal animals gradually withdrew. Cats curled up for a nap, dogs relaxed, bats and owls retreated, and insects quieted. The rhythm of the night gave way to the first light and sounds of a new day. Even in rest, the memory of movement, sound, and gentle mischief remained, enriching the sense of life after sunset. In essence, medieval nights were shared between humans and animals. While people slept or dreamed, animals moved, hunted, and played. Each creature added life, humor, and texture to the night. Shadows, sound, and small mischief created a layered, immersive nocturnal world. Nighttime animals were not just background. They were companions, playful participants, and subtle storytellers in the quiet rhythm of life after sunset. Even in the darkest hours, life was alive, playful, and deeply interconnected. The medieval night was not simply darkness to endure. It was a living, breathing space shared with creatures big and small. Shadows, whispers, and gentle movements reminded humans that the night was full of life, charm, and subtle wonder, ready to inspire imagination, reflection, and quiet delight. Chapter 12. Nighttime Mysteries and Legends. As darkness deepens over medieval villages and towns, the quiet is not only filled with the sounds of humans and animals, but also with mystery and imagination. The night, with its shadows, flickering lanterns, and distant moonlight, inspired stories, some practical, some fanciful, and some just a little eerie. These nocturnal legends were a cherished part of medieval life, whispered from parent to child, shared among neighbors, or recounted by travelers passing through. One of the most enduring sources of nighttime fascination was shadows and shapes. A tree branch swaying in the wind might look like a wandering ghost. A stack of firewood could become a hidden creature. A simple haystack transformed by lantern light might resemble a sleeping giant or a lurking monster. For medieval people, who spent long hours outdoors and relied on limited light at night, these subtle shifts in perception sparked curiosity, caution, and storytelling. Even the smallest shadow could give rise to a tale that would be retold for generations. Stories about spirits and wandering souls were common. Villagers often believed that certain hours of night, especially around midnight, were when spirits or unseen forces roamed freely. A creaking door, a gust of wind, or an unexpected animal movement might be interpreted as supernatural presence. These beliefs were rarely frightening in the way we think of horror today. Instead, they added a sense of wonder and respect for the unknown. People moved carefully, sometimes whispering prayers, sometimes chuckling at the ghosts that turned out to be only a cat or a goat. Local legends also played a large role. Every village seemed to have its own tales of hidden treasures, protective spirits, or mischievous fairies. Some stories involved mysterious lights flickering in the forest, guiding travelers or warning them away. Others told of creatures that might play harmless tricks on night wanderers. Children were captivated by these tales, imagining entire worlds beyond the fields and streams they knew. Adults appreciated the blend of entertainment, caution, and subtle moral lessons embedded in these narratives. Nighttime was a perfect canvas for these stories. The quiet amplified every sound. The soft rustle of straw, the distant call of an owl, the faint creak of a door. Each noise became a character in the unfolding legend, whether it was a clatter of a loose roof tile transformed into a fairy's mischief, or the faint moan of wind through a chimney imagined as a protective spirit. The night encouraged imagination, turning ordinary sounds into stories that were comforting, exciting, and sometimes gently spooky. In towns, narrow streets and tall buildings created echoes and shadows that fueled storytelling. Lanterns swayed, casting dancing patterns on walls. Alleyways seemed to twist and shift, hiding imagined figures. Rats scuttled across rooftops, their small sounds interpreted as signs of spirits or secret activity. Even simple tasks, like fetching water from a well, could become adventures if one was attentive to light, shadow, and sound. The medieval night, though familiar, was rich with potential for mystery. The medieval fascination with the unknown also included omens and portents. A sudden gust of wind, the hoot of an owl, or an unusual animal sighting could be interpreted as a warning or a message. These interpretations were not meant to frighten, but to encourage attention, reflection, and careful observation. People believed that understanding subtle signs allowed them to navigate life more wisely, respecting both the natural and supernatural worlds. Some legends were directly tied to historical events. Stories of ghostly knights, wandering soldiers, or ancient heroes were passed down alongside practical advice. These tales often carried lessons about bravery, honesty, or cleverness. Children would fall asleep imagining these figures, blending the moral and the fantastical. Adults enjoyed the subtle reassurance that even in darkness, there were models of wisdom and courage to guide them. The natural world also contributed to mystery. Forests, streams, and hills all seemed different at night. Owls, foxes, and bats moved in silence, while crickets and frogs added rhythm. Even weather could take on legend-like qualities. A sudden fog might be a protective veil, and lightning a sign of divine presence. Nighttime was both real and symbolic, a space where ordinary events merged with imagination and storytelling. Many medieval tales featured playful or mischievous elements. Spirits or fairies might rearrange objects, hide small items, or create harmless scares. Cats, dogs, and other animals often participated in these tales, their behaviors woven into legends as signs or accomplices. Laughter, humor, and a touch of fear were carefully balanced, making the night both entertaining and comforting. Even adults enjoyed these stories, recognizing the truth behind the humor while appreciating the imaginative twist. The process of storytelling itself was a nightly ritual. Families would gather by the hearth, sharing tales while the fire's glow cast dancing shadows. Villagers might recount what they saw during the day and embellish it with imagination for the night. Travelers or storytellers passing through a town added new elements, mixing history, legend, and humor. The night became a canvas for shared creativity, where stories reinforced culture, morality, and human connection. Even the faintest events could spark stories. A shadow that seemed to move too quickly might be a thief, a fox, or a mischievous spirit. A lantern flickering in the wind might be a guiding light or a warning. Every sound, motion, or unusual sight became part of the rich tapestry of nighttime imagination, encouraging mindfulness, observation, and gentle amusement. By the middle of the night, When most people were asleep, legends continued quietly. Children dreaming of fairies or ghosts carried the stories into their imagination. Adults reflected on signs or remembered tales told long ago. Shadows, lanterns, and animal sounds combined to create an ever-present narrative, reminding people that the world, even in darkness, was alive and meaningful. As dawn approached, the mysteries of night faded, leaving only memory, imagination, and the comfort of survival through the dark hours. Shadows receded, lanterns were extinguished, and the first birds announced the coming day. Yet the stories, lessons, and gentle humor of the night lingered, passed down in whispers, dreams, and daily conversations. Nighttime mysteries were never forgotten. They shaped perception, imagination, and culture in ways both subtle and profound. In essence, medieval nights were a blend of reality and legend. Shadows, sounds, and subtle movements inspired stories that were comforting, playful, and sometimes slightly eerie. Humans, animals, and the natural environment all participated, creating a layered, immersive experience. Nighttime mysteries were not meant to terrify, but to entertain, instruct, and connect, showing that even the darkest hours were alive with observation, imagination, and gentle wonder. The medieval night, with all its legend and subtle magic, was a space where imagination thrived, stories flourished, and the world felt alive even in quiet moments. By listening, observing, and imagining, villagers and townsfolk found a rhythm in darkness, a blend of humor and creativity. Nighttime mysteries reminded everyone that even after sunset, life was vibrant, playful, and profoundly human. Chapter 13. Nighttime Work and Watch. Even as most villagers and townsfolk slept, the medieval night was never truly still. While hearts glowed softly and humans dreamed, certain tasks continued, and watchful eyes kept vigil. Life after sunset didn't belong solely to rest. It was a delicate balance of security, preparation, and quiet labor. In rural villages, farmers often had chores that extended into the night. Livestock needed care. Cows and sheep occasionally wandered. Pigs could be mischievous, and animals sometimes required attention due to illness or hunger. A soft lantern light guided a farmer, moving quietly through pens, checking gates, or tossing hay. The work was deliberate and careful. One misstep might startle an animal, while too much noise could wake sleeping family members. Yet even these tasks carried a sense of calm rhythm, almost meditative in their repetitive simplicity. Other nightly duties were related to preparing for the day ahead. Grain might be husked, firewood stacked, or tools cleaned under the faint light of a lantern. For those living near water, small repairs to boats, nets, or fences were sometimes necessary before morning. Nighttime offered a quieter environment to focus on tasks without the distractions and heat of daylight. Despite the labor, these chores were often imbued with gentle humor. A pig rooting unexpectedly, a cat batting at a lantern, or a gust of wind knocking over a basket could elicit quiet laughter from the diligent worker. In towns, nighttime work was slightly different but equally essential. Guards patrolled the streets, their lanterns bobbing in the darkness, keeping watch for thieves, fire, or any disruption. Townsfolk relied on these night watches to sleep without worry. Guards had their own rituals. Soft footsteps, careful scanning of alleys, and sometimes a whispered conversation to break the monotony. Occasionally, a guard would stumble over uneven cobblestones or be startled by a stray cat, injecting unexpected humor into an otherwise serious duty. Taverns and inns had their own nocturnal rhythm. While most patrons had retired, a few travelers, late-night drinkers, or weary merchants might still be active. Servers quietly cleaned tables, swept floors, and ensured fires were maintained. Kitchen staff prepared food for early risers or the occasional late guest. Even at night, towns hummed with low-key, behind-the-scenes energy, often unnoticed by those tucked into beds above or nearby. Some medieval work required constant vigilance. Mills located near rivers, for example, could not be left entirely unattended, as sudden flooding or mechanical issues might damage property. Farmers with valuable crops sometimes stayed awake or shared watch duties with neighbors to prevent theft. Nighttime offered fewer distractions and a heightened awareness of the surrounding environment. Every sound, a rustle, a creak, or a soft footstep, carried meaning, blending caution with the rhythm of survival. Fire management, was another critical aspect of nighttime life. Kitchens, hearths, and workshops required careful tending. A neglected fire could spread and devastate homes, while a fire kept too high could disturb sleep or consume precious fuel. Those assigned to night duty maintained flames, stoked embers, and ensured safety, all under the flickering glow of lanterns or torches. Even such practical tasks carried a quiet beauty. The soft crackle of burning wood, the shifting shadows, and the rhythmic tending of flames offered a sense of connection to the night. Nighttime work often demanded teamwork and trust. In villages, families might share chores, with one member tending animals while another stoked fires or repaired tools. Guards in towns relied on one another, exchanging signals or soft words to communicate across darkness. This collaboration was reinforced by shared stories, small jokes, or whispered reassurances, moment of human connection that made the night feel less lonely. Nighttime labor also had a social and educational aspect. Children sometimes accompanied parents or older siblings on chores, learning essential skills while absorbing the rhythm of life after sunset. Quiet observation of work, careful listening, and small hands helping with simple tasks instilled a sense of responsibility and awareness. Nighttime became a space for learning, cooperation, and gentle mentorship, as well as practical necessity. Beyond practical chores, certain watching duties had a subtle ritualistic or symbolic aspect. A guard on the town wall or a villager patrolling fields carried a sense of vigilance tied to tradition and community. Maintaining watch was not only about safety. It was a reminder of human presence, order, and care during hours when the rest of the community was vulnerable. The night, though dark and potentially mysterious, was kept orderly through these quiet acts of responsibility. Some work was inherently solitary, but it never lacked connection to the larger rhythm of life. A miller repairing tools in the dim lantern light might hear distant owl calls, the rustle of a cat, or the soft breathing of animals in pens. A night watchman might glimpse foxes in the fields, hear crickets and frogs, or notice patterns in the moonlight that marked the passing hours. Each sound and shadow contributed to a subtle sense of companionship with the living world. Humor and unpredictability were never absent. Pigs might escape their pens, requiring a soft but frantic chase. Cats could leap into barrels or knock over baskets. Guards occasionally tripped over uneven cobblestones or startled a stray dog. These small interruptions reminded medieval people that life continued dynamically, even in the hours when the world seemed still. The night blended responsibility, quiet labor, and playful surprises in a rhythm uniquely its own. By the middle of the night, most work slowed, but vigilance remained essential. Livestock rested more quietly, lanterns burned low, and patrolling guards moved methodically. Fires in kitchens or hearths glowed faintly. Even in the calmest moments, the night retained a subtle energy of life, observation, and preparedness, bridging darkness and the approaching day. Nighttime work and watch remind us that medieval nights were not entirely passive. Humans share the darkness with animals, shadows, and sound, actively participating in a cycle of care, safety, and quiet labor. The night demanded attention, skill, and a sense of rhythm, while offering moments of humor, observation, and gentle beauty. Darkness was both a space for rest and a canvas for purposeful action, a time when people maintained life, safety, and continuity. As dawn approached, work gradually ceased. Animals settled, fires burned low, and guards handed over responsibility to early risers. Tasks completed in the dark allowed the community to greet daylight with order, safety, and readiness, having navigated the night together. Even the quietest hours left traces, memories of movement, responsibility, humor, and connection that shape perception, storytelling, and daily life. In essence, medieval nights were alive with purpose. Work and watch were woven into the fabric of darkness, maintaining safety, care, and rhythm. Life after sunset was neither idle nor purely mysterious. It was practical, reflective, and subtly entertaining, filled with observation, collaboration, and the quiet satisfaction of tasks completed under moonlight. Nighttime labor gave structure to darkness and reminded medieval people that even in the stillest hours, life continued, attentive, alive, and deeply human. Chapter 14. Nighttime Festivals and Gatherings. Even in a world where darkness often meant work, watch, and quiet reflection, medieval nights could be filled with celebration, music, and community. Festivals, feasts, and gatherings brought people together under the moon, blending laughter, song, and shared ritual. Nighttime offered a special atmosphere for merriment, a space where stories, dances, and camaraderie lit up the darkness as brightly as any torch. Villages and towns followed ritual calendars, marking seasonal festivals, harvest celebrations, religious observances, and local fairs. Some events were planned long in advance, while others arose spontaneously, after a good harvest, a wedding, or a successful market day. Regardless of the occasion, nighttime gatherings transformed everyday spaces into stages of sound, light, and human connection, where neighbors and families mingled under the stars. Music played a central role in these gatherings. Minstrels, traveling performers, or skilled locals played lutes, flutes, drums, and pipes. Their melodies floated over cobblestones or through village greens, mingling with the laughter and voices of participants. Singing along was common, whether children hummed quietly or adults joined with practiced voices. Even simple clapping, foot tapping, or rhythmic stomping added to the immersive sound. Night amplified music, making it feel intimate, lively, and almost magical. Dancing often followed the music. Villagers moved in circles, lines, or pairs, weaving steps learned over years or improvised in the moment. Children sometimes clumsily imitated adults, tripping over hems or bumping into neighbors, creating moments of innocent humor. Adults displayed skill, coordination, or playful competition, their movements blending energy and joy. Dancing strengthened social bonds and allowed participants to express delight and creativity, all under the soft glow of moonlight or lanterns. Feasting was another essential part of nighttime gatherings. Long tables were filled with bread, cheese, roasted meats, fruits, and seasonal treats. Ale, wine, or cider accompanied meals, warming bodies and spirits alike. Sharing food under lanterns or around a fire was practical and symbolic, fostering connection, gratitude, and community. Even a simple loaf of bread tasted richer when accompanied by music, laughter, and stories under the night sky. Storytelling thrived in these evening gatherings. Elders, bards, and travelers shared tales of heroes, spirits, or historic events, blending imagination with lessons. Children listened with wide-eyed fascination, captivated by ghosts, clever animals, or distant lands. Adults enjoyed the artistry, humor, or subtle moral guidance embedded in the stories. Storytelling at night preserved culture and history, weaving together entertainment, education, and imagination. Games and competitions added energy to festivities. Villagers might play a tug-of-war race or engage in juggling contests. Small prizes could reward winners, while playful teasing greeted the less fortunate. Minor mishaps, a stumble over a basket or a spill of ale, added laughter and spontaneity. Nighttime celebrations were inclusive, blending skill, chance, and humor, creating an atmosphere of joyful unpredictability. Lanterns, torches, and fires illuminated the gatherings, but darkness was never completely banished. Shadows danced on walls and streets, adding mystery and playful tension. People used light and shadow to enhance performances, storytelling, and anticipation. Even ordinary spaces became magical under flickering flames, encouraging imagination and engagement in ways daylight could not. Religious festivals and rituals often shaped nighttime gatherings. Candlelit processions, prayers, and blessings combined devotion with communal celebration. Participants might sing hymns, carry symbols, or perform small symbolic gestures. Spiritual practices during night celebrations connected practical, emotional, and sacred aspects of life, reinforcing faith and communal bonds. Even quiet observances had resonance, emphasizing humanity's relationship with the unseen and the divine. Season influenced how festivals unfolded. Summer nights favored outdoor celebrations, taking advantage of warmth and long shadows. Autumn or winter gatherings often moved indoors, emphasizing cozy fires, intimate conversation, and shared warmth. Regardless of season, humans found ways to celebrate together, using the night as a canvas for music, dance, stories, and ritual. Animals sometimes participated in or disrupted festivities, adding charm and humor. Cats darted between lanterns, dogs barked with excitement, and wandering livestock could create gentle chaos. These moments reminded people that the night was shared, and that unpredictability, laughter, and life itself were woven into every celebration. Nighttime gatherings were also spaces for creating and transmitting stories. News, personal achievements, clever solutions, and observations were shared in entertaining narratives. A farmer might recount a fox stealing a chicken, a craftsman might boast of a clever invention, or a child might describe a mischievous incident. These shared stories connected individuals, families, and communities, reinforcing a sense of culture, humor, and creativity. As night deepened, the pace often shifted toward gentle reflection and intimacy. Fires burned lower, music softened, and conversations quieted. Couples and families strolled to the village or paused near fountains and wells, speaking softly under the stars. Even as excitement waned, the magic of the evening remained, leaving participants with memories of connection, laughter, and warmth. At the close of festivities, the night returned to calm. Villagers headed home, animals were settled, and fires dimmed. Lanterns were extinguished or lowered, leaving only moonlight and starlight. Sleep followed, carrying memories of music, dance, stories, and community. Nighttime celebrations demonstrated that darkness could be both playful and meaningful, filled with creativity, joy, and connection. In essence, medieval nights were alive with social energy. Music, dance, storytelling, and shared food highlighted human connection, culture, and humor. Light and shadow, sound and silence, human and animal activity combined to create layered, immersive experiences. Darkness became a canvas for celebration, imagination, and shared delight. Festivals and gatherings under the moon reinforced community bonds, enriched culture, and filled the night with joy, laughter, and gentle magic. Even in quiet moments after the last song or story, the night carried traces of its vibrancy. The soft glow of embers, distant laughter, and the memory of shared movement and sound. The medieval night, alive with festivals and gatherings, was a space where imagination thrived, humans connected, and darkness itself became a source of joy, wonder, and shared humanity. Chapter 15. The Approach of Dawn. The night, with all its mysteries, stories, labor, and celebrations, slowly begins to fade as dawn approaches. In medieval villages and towns, this transition from darkness to light was more than a simple change in the sky. It was a gradual shift in rhythm, activity, and perception. The first hints of sunrise stirred both humans and animals, signaling the end of nocturnal life and the beginning of a new day. In the countryside, the approach of dawn was subtle at first. A faint glow appeared on the horizon, barely illuminating fields and rooftops. Stars, once bold and numerous, began to fade, their brilliance slowly overtaken by the advancing light. Villagers might still be asleep in straw beds or simple wooden rooms, but even the deepest sleeper would eventually stir as sounds of early morning life crept into the village. The animals, always attuned to natural rhythms, were among the first to sense a change. Cows began to shift and chew more actively, their low moos blending with the rustling of straw. Sheep stretched and bleated softly, nudging one another awake. Birds, long silent during the night, began to call, their songs announcing the imminent arrival of day. Dogs and cats responded in their own ways. Cats returned to cozy corners after nocturnal prowls, dogs stretching and yawning in preparation for movement and protection. Farmers and villagers awoke slowly, adjusting from the calm of night to the busyness of daylight hours. Those who had stayed awake for nighttime duties, feeding animals, stoking fires, or patrolling perimeters, were already transitioning to more active tasks. A soft lantern glow might still illuminate a kitchen or stable, but the dim light was increasingly complemented by the soft natural illumination of morning, signaling a shift in attention and energy. In towns, the transition was equally vivid. Narrow streets, quiet during most of the night, began to fill with early risers. Merchants prepared stalls, bakers lit ovens, and apprentices carried out early chores. Lanterns were extinguished, replaced by the clarity of sunlight creeping along cobblestones. The faint echo of distant animal sounds, dogs, birds, and even rats, blended with human activity, creating a layered, evolving soundscape. Townspeople experienced the shift as both practical and poetic. The night had passed, but its memory lingered in shadows, sounds, and atmosphere. Dawn also brought a change in perception. Shadows that seemed mysterious or menacing at night became ordinary shapes in the morning light. A swaying tree branch, a stack of hay, or the flickering shadow of a passing animal now appear familiar and benign. Stories and legends of the night faded in intensity, but their influence remained. Villagers and children often recounted these tales during breakfast, their imaginations still shaped by nocturnal experiences, laughter, and gentle suspense. The sky itself was a signal of transition. Pale pinks, oranges, and golds gradually replaced the deep blues and purples of night. Clouds, once invisible in darkness, took shape and color. Birds sang louder. Insects stirred in the underbrush, and the wind carried a hint of warmth and movement. Even small details, the dew on grass, the glint of sunlight on a stream, or the first rays catching on a roof tile, created a sense of renewal, continuity, and wonder. In many villages, religious practices marked the transition from night to day. Morning prayers, church bells, or small rituals acknowledged a new day. These practices blended with human routine, fetching water, tending animals, preparing food, and readying tools. The medieval day was anchored in both spiritual and practical rhythms, where dawn was not just light, but a cue for reflection, work, and preparation. Children were often the most perceptive observers of dawn. Having spent the night listening to stories, watching animals, or witnessing shadows, they noticed small changes. The chirp of a particular bird, the rustle of leaves awakening, or the transformation of a familiar object in new light. Their imaginations carried forward what they had experienced the night before, blending memory, wonder, and anticipation into the new day. Dawn also marked a time of community reconnection. Families gathered around simple breakfasts, neighbors exchanged greetings, and local news from the night was shared. Small acts, recounting a cat's mischief, laughing about a goat's escape, or marveling at the stillness of the river, reinforced human connection. Even the quietest medieval morning carried the echoes of night, preserving a sense of shared experience across households. In the fields, the work resumed with a renewed rhythm. Farmers checked fences, guided livestock to pastures, and began tending crops. Those who had been awake during the night now joined the rest, integrating nocturnal observations into their morning tasks. Perhaps a fox had been spotted near the chicken coop, or a pig had wandered, prompting adjustments in care. The night's subtle lessons, patterns of animal behavior, the movement of shadows, or the soundscape of the village, were woven into daytime life, improving preparedness, observation, and efficiency. Even natural sounds underwent a transformation. Owls retreated to roosts, bats returned to hidden nooks, and nocturnal insects quieted. Morning birds filled the air with song, frogs croaked near streams, and small mammals scuttled through underbrush. The layered soundscape shifted from nocturnal mystery to daytime clarity, guiding human perception and activity. Each sound reminded villagers that night had passed, but its lessons and rhythms persisted, enriching the experience of day. In towns, morning bustle added another layer. Street vendors opened carts, blacksmiths stoked fires for work, and children ran to chores or play. Sounds of carts, clattering tools, and early chatter replaced the gentle, subdued hum of the night. The transition from night to day was auditory as well as visual, a gradual replacement of quiet reflection with productive energy. Humans, ever sensitive to these cues, adapted naturally, carrying both practical tasks and a lingering wonder of the night into their routines. Even small, seemingly mundane acts were infused with continuity from night. Lighting stoves, sweeping streets, and watering gardens were enriched by the awareness of nocturnal life. Shadows cast by early sunlight reminded villagers of nighttime shapes and stories, while the behavior of animals continued patterns established during darkness. This blend of continuity and novelty made dawn a time of subtle reflection, preparation, and quiet appreciation. As the sun climbs higher, the world gradually shifts from the quiet magic of night to the vivid activity of day. Medieval villages and towns awakened slowly, their streets, fields, and homes illuminated by soft golden light. Shadows that had inspired mystery or gentle unease, the sway of a tree branch, a stack of hay, or a passing figure, now appear familiar, even ordinary. Yet the echoes of the night linger in memory, imagination, and the rhythm of daily life. Villagers awaken gradually, carrying both sleep and the awareness of nocturnal events. Those who attended animals, stoked fires, or patrolled through the night are already adjusting to daytime responsibilities. Others stir to the faint sounds of birdsong, rustling straw, or the occasional clatter of a cart on cobblestones. Even the most mundane morning tasks are infused with the lessons of the night. A fox spotted near the chicken coop, a wandering pig, or the soft creak of a fence informs attention and care. Dawn is not merely light. It is a bridge between reflection and action, between quiet observation and practical engagement. In towns, early risers prepare for markets, bakers light ovens, and craftsmen ready their workshops. The once quiet streets gradually fill with movement. Voices mingle, carts clatter, and animals stir. Lanterns are extinguished, replaced by the clarity of sunlight, revealing walls, rooftops, and cobblestones in sharp detail. Even as the day becomes practical and productive, the influence of night persists. Memories, attentiveness, and imagination from nocturnal hours shape perception and decisions in subtle ways. The natural environment transforms dramatically with sunrise. Streams shimmer as sunlight catches rippling water. Leaves glisten with dew, and birds sing with increasing confidence. Insects resume daytime activity, and animals adjust their behaviors to the daylight rhythm. Dogs stretch and bark. Cats seek sunlit corners, and livestock move to pastures with familiar routine. The air carries scents of earth, fire, and freshly baked bread, making the morning sensory, alive, and richly layered. Children are particularly attuned to this transition. Having spent the night listening to stories, observing animals, or imagining adventures in shadows, they greet the dawn with curiosity. Ordinary shapes and spaces appear transformed. A haystack that seemed mysterious under lantern light is now just straw. A shadowed nook reveals a sleeping cat. Yet the imagination sparked by night remains vivid, coloring their play, observation, and learning throughout the day. Dawn is both wonder and continuity, blending the night's subtle magic with the demands and delight of daylight. Spiritual and cultural practices often mark this transition. Morning prayers, hymns, or small rituals acknowledge both survival through the night and the hope of a new day. Church bells echoed across villages and towns, signaling not only the passage of time, but shared participation in life cycles. These practices tied individuals into a larger framework of community, faith, and reflection, reinforcing the connection between night, day, and human purpose. Fields and pastures filled with activity as the morning progressed. Farmers moved livestock, repaired fences, and tended crops, incorporating insights gained during the night. Observations of nocturnal animal behavior, stray movements, or environmental cues informed daytime decision-making. Townsfolk adjusted similarly, preparing markets, opening workshops, and managing daily routines. Dawn functioned as a bridge, connecting the quiet attentiveness of night with the structured energy of day, merging reflection and action seamlessly. The transformation was not only practical, but perceptual. Sunlight illuminated textures and patterns previously invisible. Rooftops glowed, walls revealed their cracks and character, and distant hills became more defined. Shadows shrank or shifted, revealing ordinary forms instead of the mysteries of night. The auditory landscape also changed. The hoots of owls and the subtle stir of nocturnal animals gave way to birdsong, livestock calls, and human chatter. The world appeared both familiar and new, inviting mindful observation and appreciation of life cycles. Daily routines were enriched by the lessons of night. Preparing breakfast, tending gardens, or sweeping streets all benefited from heightened observation, attentiveness, and memory. Stories, jokes, and nocturnal anecdotes persisted in conversation, laughter, and shared awareness. The flow from night to day highlighted continuity, where imagination and experience informed practical action and social interaction. By mid-morning, the village or town was fully awake. Markets hummed with activity. Craftsmen labored. Children played energetically, and animals followed their daytime routines. Yet the influence of night remained. Human perception, humor, and imagination continued to shape work, play, and interaction. Dawn was a time of reflection and integration, allowing nocturnal experiences to inform the day's tasks, interactions, and decisions. The transition also demonstrated human adaptability. Medieval communities relied on cues from light, sound, and animal behavior to regulate daily life, maintain safety, and coordinate work. Observing and responding to these cues ensured efficiency and survival. Dawn exemplified the balance between reflection and practicality, imagination and structured activity, continuity and renewal. Even seemingly mundane moments were infused with the night's subtle magic. Fires left in the night glowed in hearths. Shadows retained the memory of shapes, and stories lingered in conversation. Humans and animals alike adjusted seamlessly to daylight, carrying awareness, lessons, and imagination forward. The transition from night to day illustrates the cyclical nature of life, where darkness and light, observation and action, memory and renewal are intertwined. Finally, dawn symbolized renewal and resilience. Darkness receded, but its presence remained in stories, laughter, careful observation, and subtle reflection. Humans stepped into the day with attentiveness, creativity, and preparedness. Animals resumed routines, and nature moved through its cycles, reinforcing the interconnected rhythm of life. Dawn became more than a practical event. It was a moment of poetic continuity, bridging night and day, reflection and action, mystery and clarity. In conclusion, the approach of dawn in medieval life was an immersive, layered experience. It blended the quiet magic of night with the practical and social energy of day. Shadows, stories, and nocturnal lessons persisted in memory and action, shaping perception, routine, and community life. Dawn bridged night and day, imagination and practicality, reflection and labor, creating a seamless flow of life that was as rich, dynamic, and interconnected as the world itself. Even the simplest dawns held echoes of nocturnal life. Festivals, watch duties, quiet labor, or playful mischief from the night left traces that shaped morning conversation, observation, and activity. Human and animal rhythms, stories, and experiences converged, ensuring continuity and connection. Medieval people greeted the day aware, curious, and prepared, carrying both the memory of night and the promise of what lay ahead. Dawn was a bridge of life itself, linking imagination, community, and action in a gentle, enduring cycle.